How's it going, lazy Bruces? I'm Bobby Sixkilla. Welcome back to Divine Deception. It's time for the final chapter in Laverna's mission, in Laverna's story. And then we've only got 3 episodes here, and we're done, I guess, unless there's some grand stack that is the epilogue stack that comes after them all, which, given, you know, the way Zodiac Trial was structured, would not be a huge surprise, honestly. But let's jump into the final chapter of Laverna's story now. Dead money. I walked down another city street in Panthea. From the outside, one would just call it another day in the city. Much like any other, in fact. The sun was still out. There was a nice breeze, but it wasn't too cold. I can imagine many people would consider this an idyllic day. As for me, well, it had been a bit too hectic for me to agree with that assessment. Still, as I walked the street, I appreciated the atmosphere, if only for a handful of moments. And sure enough, that peaceful mood was broken as I came upon a real commotion. From the outside, it looked like the building was just some sort of metal workshop. An old one too, judging by the outside. Made sense. Metalwork wasn't exactly a thriving industry. Anyway, the notable part about this building right now was not the fact that it was a metalwork shop, but that it was currently crowded with a number of police officers. There were a number of police cruisers parked a fair distance from it, and right next to the shop was a large armoured truck. Carefully, I made my way closer. I tried to cordon off the area, but failed to do so in any meaningful way. Before long, I bumped into a familiar face. Lav? Ah, Baldera. Pleased to see you. Good to see you too, Laverna. It's nice to have a friendly face around right now. But, what exactly are you doing here? I mean, I didn't call you over. What, did someone else? I shook my head. Believe it or not, my appearance can actually be attributed to that of the fickle Lady Luck herself. I just happened to be walking down the street, and I saw a bunch of police officers gathered around here, and well, you know how I am. Always curious. Oh, I see. Wait, Lav, you were walking around here? This part of Panthea is really bad. Baldera, I live near here. Oh, damn, really? Sorry about that, me and my big mouth. It's fine. More to the point, care to explain what's happening here? Right. Well, we were called over because of a report that there were gunshots heard in the area. Sure enough, we found 2 bodies here. A murder. Seems to be more an accident, actually. An accident. Stemming from 2 gunshots. Yeah, it's weird. But that isn't why things are wild. Then do enlighten me. You know, Lav, I think you're wrong about Seth. Huh? This is an odd change in topics. About him working for the Duats. I don't think that's possible. And what, pray tell, has brought about this change of heart? We're investigating the bodies and Seth stumbled across the secret compartment. We opened it up and found a huge cache of dirty money. This appears to be a Duat front. So you have found a Duat stash. We found the Duat stash. A centralized location they keep all the money they haven't yet washed. Wow, that's certainly big news. Right? And Seth was the one who found it. I figured after all, there's no way he could be an agent. Well, yes, that's certainly compelling evidence. Bit of an understatement, don't you think? It is. No need to fight this for now. And just make Baldera sad. Well, that's nice to hear. It's not as though I wanted Seth to be a Duat agent. Yeah, nobody wants that. Good thing too. I was getting awful suspicious after the recent data corruption. Data corruption? You know how we got the DNA hit at the poly scene? One that matched some files from multiple other cities. Well, we were meant to get the report the other day, but for whatever reason, when we got the information, it was all jumbled. Jumbled? Look, I'm not hip to the tech talk, okay? I just know that something went wrong, and due to privacy concerns, it's taken some time to sort it all out. Anyway, the chief thought it must have been some sort of cyber sabotage, and I went right back to thinking it was Seth. But if it wasn't him, then it must have been an accident. Must have been. Anyway, sorry to hear that happened to you. Ah well, it's fine. Doubt there'll be any pressing information in those files, you know. Whatever's in there isn't urgently needed. I'm bored of that topic now. Tell me, can I examine the crime scene myself? I guess I don't see the harm. With Baldera's approval, I moved further forwards, entering the shop. Inside I saw another two figures. Laverna? Miss Smith. What, are you doing here? Miss Vasquez, did we not talk about this? Hey, don't look at me like that. This wasn't my fault. Laverna actually happened to be walking by this time. Complete coincidence. And then you let her in. Yes. It's fine. Though her presence seems unnecessary. Yeah, Laverna, you probably can leave. This isn't some sort of mystery. Just, you know, boring police work stuff. More procedural than anything. You'd be bored. Perhaps. But I always say that mysteries that don't appear to be mysteries are the greatest mysteries of them all. So, you're sticking around. Just to see if there's anything worth my interest. Fine. Just don't get in the way of the removal procedure. The removal procedure? Wait, don't tell me. There's something to do with the police office, with the officers loading all that cash into those briefcases. Oh, more inspiration has hit me. It also has something to do with the armored truck outside. Ah, I have it. The removal procedure involves gathering all the cash present at the scene, loading it into suitcases, and loading the suitcases into an armored truck. This is the truth. Correct. Why? Ariane sighed. Miss Vasquez, care to enlighten your friend? Sure thing. Basically, lab, we're looking at a whole lot of exposed cash. Duet money, if we're right. Now, normally those types are too afraid to make any hard moves when us officers are poking around. However, when we're looking at this type of money, we can't be too careful. Not just from the duets, we have to be careful dealing with this amount of money in general. A lot of people like money. Who doesn't? Monks, probably. Anyway, we also need to start the process of identifying the bills, trying to trace where it all came from. Starting the process as fast as possible is a big priority, so basically we want to transport all this money to a secure location as soon as possible. Makes sense. Honestly, probably could have guessed all that. But hey, now I get to know for sure. And I got to give an explanation. And I got to have my time wasted. So we all got something out of this, huh? Thanks, Squidward. Get back to work. Geez, Seth, you're a real pro at killing the mood. The mood? Baldera, 2 men are dead in this very room. Sure enough, Seth was right. I hadn't paid much attention to them yet, but there were in fact 2 dead men lying around this somewhat crowded room. Lying next to the hatch the money was being transported out of, a leather jacket had been shot through the chest, and right by the door, Wife Beater lay dead with a bullet buried in the back of his skull. 2 vaguely familiar faces, now dead. Both men had pistols lying by their bodies. That, I suppose, told the story. Speaking of those bodies, I wish to get to the mystery pronto. Lots of ground to cover. There is? Again, Laverna, no mystery here. But fine. These 2 men have been identified as duet members. A preliminary examination of the bodies revealed that the man in the white beater shirt received a strong blow to the top of the head with a blunt metal object, strong enough to cause a concussion. However, the bullet that went through the back of his head killed him instantly, obviously. Meanwhile, the man in the leather jacket was shot through the stomach, meaning that he could have survived for a short period of time after the bullet entered his system. Oh, and there's also minor bruises on his wrists. Yes, I was getting to that. Thank you, Baldera. The point is, the pistols lying next to both men have been fired once. We'll check them for prints and send them to forensics, but it seems pretty obvious what we'll find. I had to agree with Seth on that point. Say, Seth, I heard you found the money stash in investigating these bodies. How'd that work? Oh, so the bullet that shot the man through the leather jacket went to into the nearby wall, and well, it seemed to hit the magnetic lock that was keeping a hidden hatch in place, causing it to malfunction and be, not a lock. Whoa, back up. Magnetic lock? You haven't heard of these, Lav? Of course she hasn't. Ah well, we've run into these a couple of times. You find them a lot when conducting raids on drug houses. You get some hatch that blends into a wall or floor when you install a magnetic lock into it. They'll have this red little key fob that when you hold it to the lock causes the hatch to pop out. Without the key fob though, you'll never know there was a hidey hole. You sound quite familiar with the setup. That's because they're all pretty much mass produced and sold commercially from this one company overseas. No idea what caused us to be the go-to security for criminals with something to hide in Panthea, but it is the reality of the situation. Anyways, we haven't technically looked at the lock in detail yet, but I bet you dollars to donuts that the safe over there keeps the key fob to unlock the hidey hole. Baldera thumbed over to an unassuming safe sitting in the corner of the room. We haven't been able to confirm that though, since we don't know the combination. We could bust it open, of course, but that's not exactly our top priority at the moment. I took a moment to give a single nod. Understood. I now have the necessary information to proceed. Hooray. I have but one question. If there are 2 bodies with gunshots, why are those deaths being labelled accidents? Excuse me? Well, nothing's been labelled officially yet. Baldera, accident isn't the right term. But Laverna, for such an ace detective, shouldn't the situation be obvious to you? Pretend I'm dumb and explain your theory to me. I know that's pretty hard for me to imagine. Keep taking shots, Seth. See where that gets you. Look, I don't know the details, obviously. These 2 got into some fight. Some fight? Awful light on the details there. Fights among low-level delinquents are awfully poorly thought out and unexplainable to a third party. This is not a valid objection, Laverna. Chief Ariane was right. I decided to shut up and let Seth finish. If I had to guess, maybe the man in the leather jacket was an idiot, wanted to steal some cash for himself. He knocks the dude in the wife beater over the head with something, tries to incapacitate him, then he goes over to the hatch to try and pop it open. The man in the wife beater gets up faster than expected, shouts out to the leather jacket guy. The leather jacket guy turns around and gets shot in the stomach. Having realised that he just killed someone, wife beater man turns around and tries to run away. However, a leather jacket guy still clinging to life, and's a dick, so he shoots the wife-beater man in the back of the head before bleeding out. A dumb mutual killing. End of story. I shook my head, a cocky smile already across my face. Not so fast, Seth. Your reasoning is weak. Take this. Where is this blunt instrument you claim Leather Jacket used to strike his compatriot? I don't know. Then what is the deal with the bruises on Leather Jacket's wrists? Maybe they're unrelated. I voiced my dissatisfaction with these answered and gestured wildly at Seth. However, Chief Ariana and Baldera were unmoved. Seriously? Small discrepancies, Laverna, explained by slight changes in the narrative. We're not concerned with such minor details. The fact is, testing will prove that one man's gun fired the bullet that killed the other man and vice versa. That is the proof we need. Wow, are they really going to do poor Leather Jacket and wife beater like that? Not cool, guys. Seems like someone who needed to step in and peer at the truth. I looked around trying to find the piece of evidence I needed. There, that should be it. I walked closer to the body of the man and the wife beater and bent down to look at the bullet, wound closer. Sure enough, around the bullet entrance I could see faint traces of burning. There we go. Hey, Lav. Tip for the future? Maybe don't celebrate so vocally when examining a dead body. This man, there are burn marks by the pistol wound. Burn marks are created when a gun was fired at close range. If the bullet was really fired by the man adorned in the leather jacket, those burns would not exist. Then wait, what happened here? Aw, man. I gotta do this again? I need to memorize them so that I can remember for the next bit. So this one's gonna be wife beater was shot at close proximity. God damn it. Alright, no matter how many combinations I try, this will not work. The obvious upshot is, there's a third party, okay? It's taken me 15 minutes to try a million different combinations. There's the third party. I get it. Third party. Skip. We've already lost all our chips anyway, who gives a shit? Let me narrate the true sequence of events. This is not a mutual killing, but rather a calculated assassination by a third party who has slipped from our grasp. Duh. These two are on guard in this building, likely protecting the cash. Cash? The assassin knocked on the shop's door, and the man in the wife beater, not possessing the greatest intellect, went to check on the noise. Then the assassin struck down with, let's say, a metal bat, rendering the large man prone. Then the assassin stepped into the store and fired a bullet right at the man in the leather jacket. After firing the bullet, they rushed forwards, holding the slimmer man's hands in place, hence minor bruising. It was in an effort to prevent the man from fighting back or doing anything troublesome as he bled out. After one target was dead, he turned his attention back to the larger one of the two. He was walking up to the prone man and lifted him up, aware that for the scene to remain plausible, the bullet angle had to line up. With one hand, the assassin held the man up by the hair, and with the other, they fired a pistol into the back of the head. Of course, being less skilled than I, they overlooked the contradiction they were creating. Finally, they set up the scene to their liking, thus a double murder in 3 parts. I took a slight bow. Baldera gave a slight golf clap. Cool. Okay then, that must have happened. Huh? That's it? I just put out some grade A preconceived notion busting, and that's the response I get? Laverna, not meaning to burst your bubble, but at this point the murders aren't as high priority. Indeed, low-life duet members die and kill each other every day. In the face of apprehending their wrongfully earned money, another 2 dead is hardly worth fretting over. Huh. I was far from a duet fan, but the sentiment felt particularly crass even for me. Well, nothing can be done about that. At any rate, your deduction was appreciated, Laverna. We shall handle this case more thoroughly later on. As for now, it appears the convoy is prepared. Yes, I'll drive it to the checkpoint right away, Chief. Hold on, Seth's transporting the cash? Indeed. He found the stash after all. Just felt fair. More like they unloaded the work onto me. I already said I'd do it if he wanted. Whatever. I'll just get going now. Wait. Seth, who had begun to turn around, stopped at his tracks. I took a few deep breaths. Hold on. Don't rush into anything. This is a major step. One not easily turned back from. He's obviously... If you let him transport the cash, the duet members are going to take the cash. He's going to drive it to them and then say, oh no, I got held up by the duet members and they took the cash. We know that's going to happen. If I did this, I'd be burning a lot of bridges. This process might hurt quite a bit as well. Not me, of course, but people. Was I sure about this? I wasn't questioning my conclusion, of course. At this point, that was painfully obvious. I was pretty sure I knew most of the details as well. Not what I was questioning was whether or not exposing the truth right here, right now, was the right thing to do. Would it really lead to the outcome I desired? Maybe there was another way, a safer way, a better way. I needed to mentally give myself a slap. Since when did I become such a coward? I'd come this far. What? To start getting second thoughts? I was smarter than that. I was stronger than that. When I came here today, I knew what I wanted to do, so now it's just a matter of doing it. Sorry, Seth, but I kept your secret for too long. You need to be exposed, and now's the time to do it. Hold on. Everybody freeze. Calm yourself. Stop speaking. You already have the floor, Miss Smith. Get to the point. Right, the point. It's funny. Usually putting my finger, capturing the culprit, that's my favourite part of the job. But for whatever reason, this time I'm circling the end result. Take this as a rare compliment, Seth. You were able to sway my pointing finger. What? Simple. Chief, you cannot allow Mr. Johnson to drive this armoured truck. He cannot be trusted. And why is that? Because it's simple. Seth is a duet agent. He's been working with them for quite some time. The moment I said it, a hush fell over the room. The hush was partly satisfying, partly terrifying. Satisfying because it implied you had the full attention of every person in the room. Terrifying because all eyes were now on you. Any mistake you made would be caught and exploited. Seth and I had now taken centre stage. I'd thrown my glove, as it were. He had no choice but to accept the duel. It was a duel that only one of us could walk away from unscathed. And it was a duel he was fated to lose. Just as soon as it had become silent, a murmur began to arise. People were muttering things to each other. Seth became acutely aware of the eyes on him, and trying to take a step back. The crowd too, stepping back, denying him the ability to retreat. Quiet. And just like that, an order was created once more. One thing Ariane was quite good at. The chief looked at me with menace in her eyes. Miss Smith, this is a serious allegation you just laid out. Accusing one of my officers to being working with a violent gang is not something the Panthea police force can take lightly. In most cases, I would kick you out of the room immediately, but given your track record, I would assume you don't come to this unprepared. Of course not, Your Honor. Your Honor? I intend to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt Seth Johnson's guilt. I will lay out the undeniable fact that he has been collaborating with the Duet gang and cannot be trusted. I ask that you let me prove just that. Very well then. If this is true, I need to know. You have permission to make your case. Chief? Quiet, Johnson. If you care for your place in this organization, see that you don't let these claims go uncontested. Lev. I'm sorry, Baldera, but I can do nothing any longer. Seth is guilty, and he needs to be held accountable, here and now. Laverna, please. I know we were never the closest, but please, don't do this. I don't want to do this. I solemnly shook my head. No can do, Seth. I might be acting pretty uncool right now, but a crooked detective that shows bias in their deductions is even more uncool. You don't expect me to just let you do this. Of course not. Please, I ask that you give it your all. Then Seth began speaking in a louder voice. I am a proud police officer of Panthea. I've served this force faithfully for many years, doing my best to stop criminals in their tracks and do good where I can. I can't say I've been the perfect police officer, but I've always strived to do my best. To imply that I would have anything to do with a violent, unconscionable gang like the Duets is an insult to my soul. Laverna, you've had your fun playing around our crime scenes, but your role as a hack detective ends here and now. After I show this false accusation for what it is, I don't want to see your face ever again. No hesitation, no stuttering. Seth was standing up in full force. Good, good. I was glad I'd be able to have some fun with this showdown. Challenge accepted. Let the prosecution of Seth Johnson commence. Now, as the one levying the claim, naturally I shall make the first attack. Laverna, could you quit it with the pageantry? This is serious shit you're accusing me of. It is quite serious. All the reason for the pageantry. And with this, I took out one of my phones. I opened it up to show the chief of police a photograph. This is... Laverna, how'd you get this image? How, you ask? Why, I was gifted it by an anonymous benefactor. What? What does that mean? Let me see. Seth walked over to try and get a better look at the photo. An anonymous number sent me this photo. It came with no message. I don't know the intent with which I was given the image, but I do see something quite curious in it. The image on my phone was a picture of one dead Governor Garney. There was no one around, he was just lying on the pavement, clearly lifeless, just as the body had been found. Except there was one detail that stood out. It was hard to catch at first, but with a discerning eye you'd notice it. Under one of Garney's arms, there was a discarded cigarette. You see this right here? A cigarette? Correct. A cigarette not seen at the scene of the crime. Laverna, I'm very confused by all this. But mostly I'm just confused as to what this proves. Alone? Nothing. But there's another thing I wish you ought to take note of. The photo was taken at dawnbreak. You can see the beginnings of shadows forming, with one being made of this tree right here. I pointed to a specific part in the photo. Yeah, and? Wordlessly I swiped over to the next photo. It was a photo of the same angle, a photo of the exact same place, aimed at the exact same direction. The only difference was the fact that there was no dead body. That was the only difference. This is a photo I took myself as part of this investigation. I approximated the first photo as identically as possible, and I took it right when the shadows aligned perfectly with the photograph sent to me. Miss Smith, I'm failing to see the purpose of this evidence. Right. You can't, because I haven't told you the best part. I took this photograph after Aisha purported to first discover the body. And just like that, a look of understanding flashed across both Ariane and Seth's face. Now naturally, pure Governor Aisha, angel that can do no wrong, would not lie about when she arrived at the scene, so I could only assume she took this photo, and refrained from telling the police about it due to the morbid nature of it all. However, when she noticed a cigarette, she knew it was her civic duty to give this photo up as evidence. But since she didn't want to admit she took a photo of a dead body, she sent the photograph to me, a private investigator, anonymously. I was bluffing, of course. There were many other explanations than the one I was leading up to, and most involved Aisha being dirty. However, I was going to turn Ariane's deference to Aisha to my advantage in this instance. There was no way she'd let an argument that directly incriminating Aisha stand, and so I could take the next step. That must be what happened. Hold on, you're making a lot of assumptions here. Correct, Seth. That's called deduction. I can also deduce one more thing. The cigarette was not discovered upon the examination of the body. The cigarette was likely smoked by the murderer of Ghani, and only 2 people had an opportunity to remove that cigarette from the crime scene. Now naturally, seeing as Governor Aisha was nice enough to send this picture, it can only be deduced that the person who hid the cigarette is the officer who first had the opportunity to examine the scene before reinforcements arrived. That officer was you, Seth. All eyes turned to Seth as he flinched. My first blow had landed true. The onus was now on Seth to respond. He eyed me with contempt. So that's what this is about, back then. How long have you been planning this? Did you know you'd get that photo? What? Forget it. I don't even want to acknowledge this accusation with a response, Seth. But I will, of course, just to point out how silly it is. First of all, why are we ruling Aisha out of this? As you yourself pointed out, she's incredibly suspicious. She could have lied about when she arrived at the scene. Mr. Johnson, I would advise against accusing our governor. I'm just stating facts. What, you think taking a photo of a dead body apropos of nothing is less suspicious? If you're buying into what Laverne is saying, then Aisha's already untrustworthy. It is odd, but far from suspicious to take a photograph to commemorate a dead co-worker. The reason it didn't come up was because we failed to properly vet the witness, and Aisha didn't think it was relevant. Don't push on this matter further. But don't. Seth was being stonewalled. And if he didn't understand how fruitless attacking Aisha was when Ariane was around before, he certainly did now. Okay, but still, what are we basing this on? An incredibly narrow time frame based on shadows? Seriously? This is complete lunacy. Laverne, you didn't take this photo the day after the crime, right? Well, no. The day after that? No. Then why the hell are we even having this conversation? Laverne is attempting to estimate a specific time by comparing the location of tree shadows. As though the sun didn't rise at different times on different days, as though the weather didn't matter, as though the angle she took this photo from was identical to the first photo, as though the shadows in these photos are perfectly aligned. I'd remind the court that I took the second photo full minutes after Aisha claimed to arrive at the scene. You would remind the court shit because you're standing in a metalwork shop, you nutcase. And I would point out that, like you said, the distinction being made right now is a matter of mere minutes. Extremely fucking tight when you're measuring by sundial. And, even if what you said is right, you'd have to prove that Ghani was killed by Duat members to say me, hypothetically, lifting a cigarette means I'm working with them. Ariane eyed Seth with some amount of suspicion after that last statement. It was clear that Seth didn't want to make the argument. The fact that he had was an admission that he lacked faith in the first argument. A sign of desperation. Still, Chief Ariane shrugged his shoulders. It's certainly an interesting point you raised, Miss Smith. Another display of your investigative work, which I do admire and respect. However, as Mr. Johnson pointed out, it's lacking. When you're making a case against one of my alphas, I would prefer if your evidence is far less thin. There are many oddities and obscurities with the story you presented, as well as some alternative explanations. By itself, it proves little. I just nodded. Absolutely, Chief. I couldn't agree with you more. Seriously? Oh, Seth, you couldn't possibly believe this is all I had. When I come to duel, I intend for my victory to be flawless. This is far from the end of my assault. Rather, I offered this up as a first course. No, an appetizer. I wish this to colour your view of the upcoming evidence. You know, you shouldn't admit to trying to bias people. Augmentation is biasing people, Seth. Argumentation. I would have thought you'd know that. Just get on with it. I nodded. I have another photograph to present. Surprise, surprise. Seth's bitter comment did little to deter me from taking out the phone once more and swiping to another choice image. In it, a familiar vase was seen sitting in an unfamiliar accommodation. For your perusal, Chief. Ariane took the phone and looked it over with Seth observing over her shoulder. Again, I fail to see the point immediately, Miss Smith. I imagine you will enlighten me? Brilliantly deduced, Chief. Now, this photograph was also sent to me anonymously. It comes from the private residence of one Mr. Yi, a suspect in a robbery case involving a late restaurant owner by the name of Milo, and also someone believed to be a high-ranking official in the Duet organization. Hey, I object. How the hell are you getting all these photos? Is that not incredibly suspicious? That's not the point, Mr. Johnson. The method with which I obtain my evidence is irrelevant. I consider it highly relevant. Chief, you're not seriously going to let this slide, are you? Ariane briefly looked from Seth to me, a grim look on her face. We will deal with the matter of the photographs at a later time. For now, I wish to hear what she has to say. Seriously? Thank you, Chief. Now then, with this vase firmly placed in the custody of Yi, I would like to re-examine that long-closed robbery case. Once viewed as a low-stakes diversion, it now stands as the key to proving Seth's involvement with the Duets. At the time, I came very close to defining the missing vase as a robbery job done by Yi in cooperation with Thane, Shadow of Panthea. However, that accusation failed due to the issue of mismatched stickers. Excuse me? Oh yes, you weren't there for that one, were you? Well, it was a festive romp. Fun was had by all, but in the end, our targets got away. A rarity for me, I must admit. The case perplexed me for some time afterward. However, I must ask that we turn our method of thinking around. The photograph firmly places the blame on the incident on Yi, as I suspected. The question no longer becomes who took the vase, but rather, how did Yi get away with taking the vase? While I circled the question for some time, I eventually found the answer. In fact, it was the answer that got me first to suspect Mr. Johnson as a Duet plant. Though I would not get to the proof until much later, I always knew Yi was behind that foul robbery. The sticker swap still stumped me, stupidly. And then in a flash, it came to me. The argument rested upon the idea that the sticker could not be removed from the first safe in a quick manner. This was never disputed. In fact, we agreed at the time that had Yi or one of his men had the opportunity to get the second safe, again, they could have placed the first sticker in the proper place. The second sticker, of course, would have to be carefully removed before the heist even began. I posit that the person who stuck the first sticker was no official Duet member, but rather an unofficial one, Seth. But you have to be kidding me. Explain how I could be mistaken. As far as I can see, the method to steal the safe could only have happened as I outlined, and yet the first sticker must have been placed on the second safe. The only people who had the opportunity to do that were the officers who diligently patrolled the scene. I believe when you got to the scene, you were contracted by Yi and coerced into placing the sticker when you got the chance. In fact, he even created such an opportunity. Without explaining himself, he asked you to go check out the safe all alone. Laverna, is that what your proof is going to be? Wild stretches that aren't remotely plausible? Mr. Johnson is somewhat unfamiliar with the details of this particular case. Mr. Smith's argument makes sense to me. Thank you, Chief. Now, what are you going to do, Seth? Try to pin it on someone else? Baldera, maybe? Of course not. That'd mean buying into a word of your crazy bullshit. Then refute me. I will. This whole thing relies on the dumb idea that the stickers must have been swapped at some point. But that's only true if we buy into the idea that the safes were switched in the first place, which I called crazy at the time. If the vase was stolen by any other method, this evidence loses all possible weight. Very well then, explain another method. Excuse me? I thought we exhausted the possibilities quite thoroughly at the time. My explanation of the heist was the only one that remained. If there was some other way Yi could have stolen the vase, one that didn't rely on your help for the cover-up, then enlighten me. How should I know? It could be any number of things. You're expecting me to solve a case that old after this time? I'm expecting you to acknowledge that if there was another way that the vase could have been taken, I would have found it at the time. Do that and confess your guilt. You can't know that. There's always the possibility that there's just some method we didn't know about. You know, Devil's Proof, Hempel's Raven, that shit. Another unknown possibility? What a pitiful excuse. This isn't an affirmative defense. Affirmative defense? Seth took a moment to scream into his hands and pace in a circle. Then he walked right back up to me with an angered look. Fine, how's this for affirmative defense? Why should we believe any of your shit? Excuse me? Did I stutter? Surprisingly not. Oh, fuck you. All this evidence is being very suspiciously sourced by you. Well, if you're questioning my integrity, I can question yours. How do we know you're not a Duet agent? Are you serious right now? Or I don't fucking know. How do I know you're not something? That you don't have a secret agenda right now? I mean, who even are you? I know so little about you, none of us really do, and yet everything you have against me requires us to trust you. I don't, and nobody else should. So that's the angle you're taking. Somewhat disappointing. Oh, sorry I'm disappointing you. Okay then, if we bring up evidence that doesn't rely on my involvement, will you be swayed? Fine. Try it. You've got none. I took a moment to pause, thinking. I looked around the room, and then I had it. I guess it's good I chose to strike now. After all, you've given me the proof I need for my accusation to strike true. How do you figure that? I believe you're a duet agent. I don't believe this murder scene was an accident. Therefore, I can only deduce paradoxically that the duets wanted this stash of money to be discovered. And they tasked you with discovering it. Okay, sure, whatever you say. For it to work, they need you to conceivably stumble across the hidden hatch, which means the bullet must have struck the magnetism device precisely. However, if the murder occurred as I hypothesized, such accuracy is likely impossible. They could reasonably get the bullet to be fired into the device in a broad sense, sure, but to cause a specific defect? I find it unlikely. It'd be simpler to actually just leave the hatch open, just by a crack. And I believe they tasked you with setting up the scene. Me? Why would they do that? I gestured toward the slumped over body by the stash spot. One dead body was slumped against the hatch. It was possible that after a prolonged period, the weight could close the hatch naturally. An easier method would be you to come in later, check the dead bodies, go over the safe, then open it using the combination gifted to you, unlock the hatch with the key fob, place the key fob back in the safe and leave. Then when you've discovered the cash stash, the bullet provided a plausible excuse. What part of this complete nonsense is supposed to be proof? I'm banking that you made a mistake. I think you checked the dead bodies with your hands. Huh? Then when you grabbed the white key fob inside the safe, the red blood got your prints on it. We could force open the safe, check the key fob, see if I'm right. Heh, that's actually funny, Laverna. It's actually funny how clumsy that was. I mean, seriously, you're trying to get me to say the incriminating detail only the culprit could have possibly known? Nice try. God, this is cliche even for... Seth trailed off, realizing his mistake. Got him. The culprit accidentally incriminated themselves by the slip of the tongue. Really, Seth? You think that low of me? I absolutely loathe that trope. It has no grace. Completely removes the importance of the investigation, and namely, it comes across as cheap. However, now that you bring it up, what exactly was I trying to get you to say that only the culprit would know? The incriminating detail, as you put it. I mean, how you emphasize that the key fob was white, you know? Right, but you've run into these sorts of magnetic locks a ton of times in the past. They're manufactured. It would be totally understandable if you said the key fob was actually red. Hell, just a couple of minutes ago you talked about that in front of me. So then, why do you think I was trying to get you to say something only a culprit would know? What was the one incriminating detail? Your reaction should have been confusion, not annoyance. I had another thought. I get using this mass-produced magnetic lock for drug stashes, but seeing that as this appears to be Duet's primary location for storing their dirty money, would they really use the same thing here? I mean, they had 2 guards stationed here. Surely they wouldn't rely on a system that's so flawed. So then, perhaps this magnetic lock is modelled after those mass-produced ones, but it is instead a custom design. A custom design with a custom key fob. You're not a... Then, did you think I was trying to get you to describe the key fob as that custom design just then? Except, I don't know how you come to that conclusion unless you had the exact same deduction I just made. Did you? You didn't. You would have said so if you did. It's only natural to think that you just thought, just like Baldera, that the key fob would be like all the others you've seen. That it's red. That there's nothing to catch you on. Unless, of course, you did open the safe finding a custom key fob. Darn it. I said I hated that trap, but you know what? I ended up stumbling into it all the same. Oh well. That's not definitive. That's just me, you know, being confused. You were wording things weirdly. Like, you were trying to get me to trip over something. That's the whole reason why I claimed you were doing the super detective trope. I didn't think it through. I didn't consider if your dumb ploy actually made sense. Come on, Seth. Is it not time to throw in the towel? I'm not throwing in shit. You still have nothing. Every single piece of proof you brought up is too weird. It's obscure, it's loosey-goosey, it doesn't hold up. Okay then. So do you want me to get into the hard proof? It's a lot less fun, but it's sure as hell damning. Want to go over your record, Seth? See how many cases involving the duets you've been a part of? How many of those scenes you've gotten to early? How many of those ever got a conviction to go through? Want to go into detail how you've been spending your free time? Want to audit your cash flow? Seth, it's pretty obvious that this has been a silent certainty for some time now. I'm just the first to say it. But anyone paying attention knows it, they just don't want to rock the boat. Hell, even Baldera knows deep down that you're dirty. Baldera? Seth looked over to Baldera, but she couldn't meet his eyes. This isn't some shocking reveal, Seth. You've all known for some time. Be thankful that you were able to be as free as long as you were. But that has to come to an end now, Seth. It's time to answer for yourself. Seth, honestly, you should view this as a good thing. A good thing? Easy, easy. Look, you got 2 options now. You can keep denying like you are now, making desperate excuse after excuse. You'll probably get away with it. But just like before, everyone will know that you're dirty. Everyone will see you as criminal scum. And when an accident happens to you, nobody will come to your funeral. Or you can take this opportunity to do the right thing. Confess now. Let your story be heard. And just maybe you'll find some forgiveness. I just wanted to protect everyone. I'm sorry. At this point, Seth had fully broken into tears. He just looked down, sobbing. No one else spoke. No one else had anything to say. I'd broken through his defenses. The duel ended in my victory. Nobody knew quite what to do next. Mr. Johnson, it should be no surprise for you to hear that this is deeply troubling to me. No, it is beyond deeply troubling. It hurts to hear, almost physically. Like Miss Smith pointed out, some part of me had always had some suspicions, but for the truth to be this, I genuinely appreciated your company, Mr. Johnson. To learn that you're nothing more than a disgusting criminal was a betrayal I will not soon forget. How on earth do you intend to live with yourself after what you've done? You're an amoral traitor. Chief. Nadira stepped in. There was a sad but determined look in her eyes. That's enough. She then turned to Seth. Seth, I'm sorry. What? I should have known sooner. I should have done something. I should have reached out to you. Talked to you about this. I didn't. Because I wanted to turn my head away from the truth. I didn't reach out to you when you clearly needed that from me. And I'm sorry for that. I should have been there for you and I failed. Tears began welling up. It began to water in Baldera's eyes as well. I didn't want this to turn into some weeping fest. While I had the opportunity, I still wanted to get some information out of Seth. Seth, there's nothing you need to hide at this point. It's all out there, so we may as well strip away the facades. I'd like you to be honest with me. It's probably for the best, for everyone's sake. The criminal's supposed to give the whodunit speech, right? The why-done-it speech. I smiled and nodded. I know you're not eager to do me any favours after all of that. But if you would, I want the one thing I've been pursuing this whole time. The truth. Seth considered this a few times, then nodded. At this point, he'd mostly regained his composure. Looks like he was ready to tell a story. I really looked up to Issa. Issa? What does he have to do with anything? Quiet, Baldera. Let him speak. At this point, I had a pretty good idea of what happened, but better let Seth explain it. He was... This is going to sound super corny, but I'd almost call him like a brother figure. I don't know, maybe I'm being over dramatic, but you know, I was an only child, so, you know, kind of fits. I know, he just stood out. He was charismatic, he was confident, he was competent. Everything I'm not. And despite it all, he chose to be friends with me. Why, I'll never quite know. My running theory's been pity. Anyway, my point is, with apologies to Baldera, I think I knew him more than anybody else. Which is why I was able to see the signs. I've never been a great detective, all things considered, but even I was able to see how fishy things were after the attempted Aija assassination plot was foiled. I wanted to be wrong. When I looked into things, I was trying to disprove my ideas, not confirm them. Honestly, this whole thing got out of hand because I was naive. Lavinia, you say you had these suspicions for a while? You were waiting for the right time to spring them on me? I just nodded. You know, some people might think that's weird. Me? I just wish I had your level of foresight. Because I just mindlessly confronted Issa about my suspicions. Privately, of course. And he denied them all. Brushed them off. Because of that, things got out of hand. Suspicions? Seth, what sort of suspicions? I wanted to believe his excuses. But a few days later, Issa and I were out late, searching for a robber. Or at least, that's what I thought. No, the whole thing was a setup. Issa had been ordered to lure me there. Bring me to his handlers. His duet handlers. What? I don't know how to say it, and I don't want to say it. But I'm not the first police officer on this force who's been a duet plant. I could feel a collective wave of unease pass through the crowd as Seth dropped this little bombshell. A general understanding of how fucked things were. I still wonder, you know, how much of Issa's reputation as a star detective came from him abusing his inside sources with the duets. How much of this was intentional? The idea that Issa was just some fame-hungry opportunist was a nice smile. I tried to throw away that idea. But what happened next certainly doesn't refute it. Issa, the good duet plant that he was, had reported my suspicions back to his handlers. They were then trying to decide what to do with me. Issa, for his credit, tried to argue on my behalf. He exaggerated my ability as a detective. My sway with the force made me sound like an awfully good candidate, despite that not remotely being the case. But the duets bought it. That night is so crystal clear in my memory. Marduk was there, and he asked Issa point blank if I was worth recruiting. Issa said yes. Marduk considered it for a moment. Then he nodded, and then he just said, I don't need 2 corrupt officers to look after. Right after that, he pulled out a pistol and killed Issa on the spot. No. Again, I just grimly nodded. That was an uncomfortable truth. There was evidence to suggest this reading of events. I would later learn that Issa had recently gotten more aggressive in his negotiations, asking for a larger payroll, leveraging the fact that he was the only police contact the duets had. That, combined with the fact that he was apparently sloppy enough that I could figure him out, probably sealed his doom. After that, I tried to get out of this job I had apparently been coerced into, but they threatened my life. They told me that if I didn't comply, they'd just kill me. And I tried to argue back, told them I'd get them all thrown in jail. And to that, they just responded that more duet members would take their place, that I couldn't arrest all of them, and that if I disobeyed, it wouldn't just end with me. They'd go after everybody I cared about. They'd go after anyone I was close to. And that includes, after everything, I still cared about Issa. And because I got him killed, I wanted to protect the people he cared about. So it was slow corruption. I tried refusing their payments, I tried ignoring their requests, but it started so small. Just don't patrol the street this time. Just get to the scene of the crime a bit slower. Don't be quite so hard on the perp in the interrogation room. They were minor requests, and the alternative was... I mean, I knew they could do it. They would do it. They fucking killed their own police contact in front of my eyes. You think they'd pull punches after that? So, I mean, before long, we got to now. That's sort of it, I guess. Well, not all of it, but I think the gap from then to now goes without saying. And once more, it was silent. No one knew what to say. It was, of course, a lot. The story just felt empty. Not like it was fake or anything, just it was without some big moral takeaway. It wasn't some dramatic reveal or cathartic tale. It was small and sad and kind of pathetic. Finally, Baldera broke the silence. Seth, I never knew you had to go through all that. Miss Vasquez, I expected better than for you to fall for this act so quickly. And Mr. Johnson, the same applies to you. Do you expect us to simply absolve you of blame because you claim you were coerced? Seth weakly shook his head. Nah. I am a coward. Just because it was a rough situation, that doesn't mean I didn't still support a horrible group of criminals. It doesn't mean I didn't do some pretty terrible things when you look at it clearly. I just wanted to give Laverna what she won. The truth. He gave Seth a small smile. Oh, damn. I was gonna feel a little guilty for breaking up this mood. But it had to be done. Thank you, Seth. But with all this in mind, I'd like to go back to the original point I was making. And that is, Seth cannot be trusted to transport this cash to a more secure location. Yeah, I think that one probably goes without saying. In that case, we'll have... No. No? Chief, I mean no disrespect, but look at what just happened. One of your most trusted officers confessed to working for the Duats. Who knows who else might be corrupt? I thought Seth made it clear that he was the only Duat agent on the force. Sure, he might think that, but if I were the Duats, I sure as hell would have at least two for situations like this. Miss Smith, what are you suggesting? I'm just saying, a little bit of added caution might be for the best right now. Seth, are the Duats planning an ambush on this convoy? Seth just meekly nodded. What? What's the point in that? Having you bust them and then having them take it all back? How am I supposed to know? I just asked for your answer, Seth, not your commentary. My point is made. We need to be careful. I believe the safest choice is to have the truck be driven by one officer that I can guarantee is not super secret Duat spy. As I said this, I walked over and patted my choice on the back. Baldera, obviously. Laverna? Pandora? I say we let Officer Pandora drive the truck, but she's an idiot. Thank you? But why do you know that I can't be a Duat spy? You'll understand when you're older, sport, because you're too fucking stupid. Anyways, as an added precaution, I'll also draft the route you'll take. Obviously, it'll have to be one radically different from the one Seth would have likely taken. It'll be a hectic maze that no one could possibly predict. Ariane just sighed, and a defeated look on her face. Fine. Since you're seemingly so fixated on it, handle the transportation however you deem fit, Laverna. I have bigger issues that need addressing. And just like that, I was given free rein. I began to set things up, acutely aware of the drama happening just behind my back. But then one of my phones began to buzz. Huh? What could that be? I took out the phone and looked over it. God damn it, Yi! Okay. A lot happened. A lot's gone on. We can't talk about it all. I mean, we could, but that would kill the pacing. I really have but one thing I want to discuss with you. That's Seth. Now you see the whole picture, more or less. This wasn't really much of a twist for you, per se, but you got a much clearer idea of it all. Seth Johnson, police officer, Duat agent. Something to hate him for. Two things to hate him for, really. Undoubtedly, he's done bad things, but he has good reason. Or does he? What counts as good reason? I think you'd be hard-pressed to call him a saint. But what about a sinner? No, that's too light. We're all sinners. What about a piece of shit? I'm not going to let you give me some waffling answer here. If you provide a middling path, people are going to walk it at times like these. And that's boring as hell. Point blank, give me an answer. Seth, piece of shit or not? No, I don't think he's a piece of shit. He's done very bad things. but he's just protecting himself and everybody that he cares about. Really? I mean, you can. I gave you the option. But I get it, you don't want to. Fair. Maybe name-calling is unwarranted. Or maybe you really have sympathy for the bastard. I do. I hope it's not the latter thing, though. Listen, he upholds evil. He has done bad things. He can give as many excuses as he wants, but really, he's a coward, through and through. Had he defied the duets? Had he been killed? Things would have been better. And if getting yourself killed is a moral action, then I think it speaks for itself. That is a pretty harsh stance to take, but okay, fair enough, I suppose. Alright, we're jumping into Thane's 1 in the next one. We've only got 3 episodes left to go for Thane's 1. So, it's all going to shake out soon. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.